I'm going to pull up my agenda here so we can go through what we're talking about today and get started. So first of all, we have Andrew Hickman from Teaching and Learning at ESD 113 that's going to talk to us about EdTech Plus and the Future Focus Educator Summit coming up this summer. Then we have Mark Rose from the Partners Group to talk about the Long-Term Care Trust Act and hopefully answer all of our questions about that because I'm sure we have a lot. Dawn from CRISC is here for updates and reminders from their side of the house. Then we'll talk about budget reminders and noteworthy items and any information sharing. And that's a good time if you guys have anything that you would like to share with the group. And then we'll end with some celebrations with retirements and new hires. So with that, I'm going to stop share. And Andrew, if you are ready to go, you have control if you have anything to share on the screen. And thanks for being here.
Perfect. Well, first off, I wanted to just thank you all for letting me have 15 minutes to share the updates around EdTech Plus, as well as the Future Focus Educator Summit. I'm hoping that you can bring them back to your districts and have conversations around them. So the first thing I'm going to do is definitely share my screen, as well as post access to this slide deck so you can have it for any time in the future. So feel free to take it and use it as you see fit. So first things first, once again, thank you. I'm Andrew Hickman. I'm Director of Educational Technology out of Capital Region ESD, and I'm also in charge of the EdTech Plus and distance learning pieces. My other jobs include the Association of Educational Service District Educational Technology Director as well. So I also run statewide learning across the state for EdTech. So that is my current roles. So I'm going to kind of just go through this, some updates around what the program does, and then we'll end with the budget amount for starting with 21-22 school year. So you can see exactly what the cost structure is for districts that are already currently part of EdTech Plus, as well as those that are interested in joining. So the first thing, what does our services offer? Well, for all EdTech Plus districts and member districts, anything that we provide within our service realm is already paid for with your subscription, which ends up being a lot cheaper than hiring per contract base per days. So every training that we provide for you, either asynchronously, live, in district, or remote, is already covered in your cost. We also offer customized district supports where if you want to request anything just for your district, and I'll give an example. Shelton School District and I met yesterday, and we are running their entire high school and alternative school through Canvas supports, 18 hours of clock hours that we customized and built for them as their training and their district is moving to using Canvas next year. And then we're going to continue offering supports to IT to help set up Canvas, as well as supports all next year as teachers need it building their courses. So that's part of our services. Simply, Kelly sent me a request. We met, built it together, and now they're starting that actually today. Other things that we have online and district coaching. So if you want one-on-one coaching with teachers that are really trying to work on integrating technology into their classroom, as you know, as of the last 18 months, that's been highly important, including distance learning, how to use Zoom with students or Microsoft Teams or the Google. We've done all of those supports for our region. Districts understanding how to use Chromebooks, we do all those supports as well, and how to use technology within their content. We have built a library of online professional learning. We're up to about 48 courses that are available, and member districts, there's no cost for those. So teachers can access professional development at any time for no cost. They can take them on their time, which means no sub, as well as they can go through them on their schedule. And yes, there is plenty of STEM clock hours to cover those fees for the teachers. We also offer EdTech support for all staff. I do a lot of work with office staff, as well as support on how to use different apps and technology. And then the last one is we have access to what is known as Portal 113, which is where we house our online resources. So currently this includes ProQuest, which is basically a virtual library resource. We have things like culturegrams where they can learn about things across the world, as well as research databases. And then we also have access to a portal called InfoBase, which is where they can get thousands and thousands and thousands of videos. I believe there's up to 485,000 videos on any topic you can think of that they can use in their virtual environments or in their classrooms, as well as online interactives. So those are things like graphs that they can plot points on through a game. So everything like that is available through the portal. Just really quickly to show what the portal looks like. It's a one-click. Once they log in with their district, North Thurston is one of our member districts. So once they log in, they will have access to the portal. They simply click on these and they can get into those videos, etc. So Learn 360 is that info base. We just now added Reading Rainbow, Sesame Street. There's a ton in here. And yes, they can use it in classroom or at home. Okay, so those are some of our services. Just a little bit more data. We also have the courses available through PD Enroller. So if you have anything specific, they would register through their system. And like I said, I also run the statewide series of courses. So we have the AESD, which is our statewide network. We created those 48 online courses available for teachers and paraeducators and substitutes and private schools this year. And what we are recommending with these, if you're an EdTech Plus district, is you can choose the courses that work best for you. You can see them down here. And then we can help walk your staff through them. So like a coach on the side where we can work through them as a staff. They can get training, have that additional support. And it's no extra charge because it's already covered in your cost. So what does this look like for our region? Well, in our region this year, this is from our current data, we have served over the last year 82,027 plus, because I'm sure it's been updated since then, clock hours to teachers just in our region that have partaken in EdTech Plus courses. So that includes something we added this year called your Regional Educator Network, which is a leadership group for educational technology. We had those teachers that were interested in growing their EdTech work with us through the Regional Educator Network. And it's very exciting. New things coming in 2021. A couple new courses, Technology Integration Essentials. This will be an 18-hour course that teachers can take on their own time. And it tells them pretty much everything for if they're teaching remotely or hybrid, which I know a lot are going back into. We're also doing best practices. And then brand new, and we're actually working out the details now. I just showed you that we had ProQuest and InfoBase. Washington State Library has added Gale Resource Library to their network. So that will be added into the portal for districts as well. Next year, Gale will be no additional cost for 1 year. And then we're going to see if we want to switch to Gale and keep ProQuest, or if we want to do both or just have one or the other. So that will be a discussion with districts. But for 1 year, we get Gale for free, which is very nice. So I'm going to pause there. Is there any question about the EdTech Plus services? And yes, I'll get to the budget very soon.
I do not see anything in the chat. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so let's talk about this summer. So one of the things that we know with teachers and actually all staff is that this year was hard. Just bluntly out there, this was a very hard year. And we also heard from staff and teachers and principals and business managers that it would be really nice if we had some way to get more prepared for next year and think about the future. So with that, we have developed as a statewide network a summit known as the Future Focused Educator Summit. And we're trying to redefine the way educators is defined. We consider educators in this summit any staff that works for a district. You are all included in that. So when we opened this up, we wanted a smaller event, and it's continued to grow. We now have it 4 days long, 2 days specifically for leaders and district staff, so yourself included, would be the first 2 days, where we have intentional planning focused for those leadership. The next 2 days is when all staff come in and really plan for the future. We have over 75 sessions ranging from additional topics of business. We even have a financial aid topic, how to integrate for students. We have a lot of professional development for teachers, STEM focused, cultural, race, and equity focused. It's becoming a very large event. I'll show the website in a second, but I wanted to play this video just quickly, and I'll reshare my screen. Okay, so here we go. This is kind of just our promotion. So this summit is at the end of July, July 26th through 29th. It's 100% virtual. It is 100% free for all staff. And when I mean all staff, we do encourage all staff. We are doing clock hours. We are also combined now with Alaska and Oregon. And we do have presenters from across the country. This summit has grown, and I can show it here on the website. So it shows the two different pathways. Here's the leadership pathway, which you would be involved in if you would like. And then here's the educator's pathway for all staff. Our goal is to have this be an inspiring event. There are actual fun things built in. For example, yoga sessions we have built into the middle. We have karaoke nights. We have a wine and paint night being sponsored by the Washington State Library System. But the big news is we have 6 keynotes that are nationally recognized keynotes that are going to be here, that are all focused on inspiring and being ready for the next year. That's really our intent. We want to make sure that everybody's included, help kick off your year, and get involved. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with your staff or registering yourself, that would be wonderful, and I appreciate it. It's 100% free, virtual, no sub cost, no travel cost, and everybody that attends does get a nice little gift as well. Okay. Other news I was asked to share is we have this series coming out in the future called The Road to Distinguished, where we're taking all the TPEP frameworks, and they will be virtual, and it will help staff get to distinguish for their evaluation. Now, the important part, pricing structure of EdTech Plus. So this is our updated pricing structure for 21-22. This does not change much for any district that is a member. We did a 0.05 increase just for cost of living, those type of things. Just because our products increased, we had to put the increase as well. So here's what it looks like. We have some districts that only want access to ProQuest. That's 53 cents per FTE. So for some districts, that's $200. Depending on your number of students. Some districts want media, which is ProQuest and info-based, so ProQuest, the library type resources, as well as those video and interactive type resources. That's $7.30 per student per FTE. And then Gale is coming this summer. We should have it up and running by July, but there's going to be no cost added to anything for Gale for the next year. If you want to be part of EdTech Plus, which includes those media subscriptions, as well as support to use them, and any professional development that we offer, coaching in district, and our time to work with your staff, and it's by request, or you can access any of our virtual things for free. We have a minimum of 400 FTE just to cover costs. So the minimum price of a district, if you have 400 or less, is $3,465. That's just minimum cost for 2021-22 school year. If you're 401 to 4,000, you would pay the minimum for the first 400, and then it's the $4.33 per additional FTE. And then the next one is above 4,001, so 4,001 plus, it's the minimum, and then it's $1.58 per FTE after that minimum. What this does is just recuperates the costs and the number of days. It basically equates that each district would get around 8 days at a cheaper rate than we would charge if we were to just do contract. And then you also get access to the media. So that's what we're looking at for pricing structure. And I landed exactly on my 15 minutes. So I appreciate that. And if you, of course, need anything, I'm your contact. And if you have questions about EdTech Plus, I'm your contact. And if you want to know if you're a member district, just email me or ask, and I can let you know if you are. But those billings will be coming out soon from Stephanie Winter. So please expect those just with the updated price. I think it's $100 and some more than what it was last year. Any questions?
Great, thank you, Andrew. Great information, and I will send this slide deck out to you guys as well after the meeting so you can have Andrew's contact information and figure out if you already have these services or if you want them. So thanks so much.
Thank you all so much for letting me come. I appreciate it.
Have a good day.
You too.
All right, so moving on now, we have Mark Rose from the Partners Group that's going to talk to us. Mark, are you on here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Hi. Good morning.
Well, hey, thank you so much for having me on. Just let me go ahead and get my screen share moving, and we're going to talk today about sorry, just give me one sec. Somehow this wasn't quite working. There we go. Okay, that's better. So we're going to talk today about the Washington State Long-Term Care Act and how that impacts districts, and quite frankly, a little bit about why maybe you should care, because it is a private thing, but it's something that you know, it's something we haven't really seen before. So there we go. We should be able to, hopefully we're sharing screen now so you guys can see. So my name, like I said, is Mark Rose. I work with school districts throughout the state. Did a lot of work with SEB. I'm also a registered lobbyist. And work with all things benefits related to K-12. And our job's changed a lot the last few years. I know a lot of you on the call, just with the implementation of SEB. And so can you guys see my PowerPoint presentation or not?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, great. So here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to cover, the agenda. We're going to talk about the Long-Term Care Act, talking just some key points. We're going to go through some important dates, sample employee communication, impact to districts and why districts should care about this, and then open up some time for questions if you guys have it. And I'll try and go, I know a lot of you have been through this stuff before. I'll try and go relatively quickly through it. And so key points. So this initial law was passed in 2019. It's the first of its kind in the United States. If you talk to a purist, they will tell you this was designed to provide long-term care for individuals. On its face, that might be true. It does give a small benefit for long-term care. This was designed to reduce the state's Medicaid obligation, period. So as such, what it does is it takes a payroll tax and charges people out of their paycheck, and it uses that to buy a benefit that reduces the state's Medicaid obligation to pay for long-term care. And so it has a positive fiscal note of around $1 billion. And that's why it got so much support from both Democrats and Republicans in getting it out. So the program benefits are going to be funded through a new payroll tax. So that payroll tax begins in January of next year, and it's 0.58% of payroll. And it doesn't matter whether you're an entry-level bus driver or whether you're Jeff Bezos, your W-2 income will be taxed at 0.58% with no cap. So it applies to everybody. So eligible individuals can receive up to $36,500 in lifetime benefits adjusted for inflation for a variety of long-term care services. Long-term care services would be things like you need assistance with 3 of the 5 activities, 10 activities of daily living that they define as things like transferring, toileting, dressing, feeding yourself, those type of things. And so the benefits are payable in $100 units, which generally works out to $100 a day. So it's about a 1-year benefit. To put it in perspective, the average cost per day of nursing home care in Washington is around $400. So you're not going to get a whole lot of benefit from it. But like I said, it does, every dollar that's being paid out by this is going to reduce the state's Medicaid obligation, and 100% of these benefits are paid by individual payroll taxes, not by the state. So the benefits for long-term care services are only available in Washington state. This is probably the single biggest detriment to the program outside of being a very small benefit. So if you are spending some time on a boat, April's background looks like she's on a boat. And so, or if you decide you might want to live in Arizona, Idaho, New Mexico, anywhere that doesn't rain quite as much as it does here, once you're not working, you will have no benefits. Benefits are only payable inside Washington state. This is also a good point to bring up another one that is no benefit. So if you are going to work 3 more years or 4 more years, you probably have no interest in keeping this policy, because the benefit structure is set up so that you have to have worked 5 of the last 10 years when you apply for a benefit. And so that means if I worked 4 years and then I get disabled and need long-term care services 4 years after that, I don't have any coverage. So there is a really small window where if you needed benefits in exactly 3 years, you could do it if you work the next 3 full years, because it's 3 of the last 6 years or 5 of the last 10. So once again, there's a vesting period. So once you work 5 years, you'll no longer have to worry about not having benefits if you don't work, but you have to get that 5 full years of service at 500 hours or more to be fully vested. So here's the main topic of discussion, which is they decided that employees with long-term care insurance, with private insurance, any kind of insurance that's technically long-term care, so it could be a $20 a day benefit or a $100 a day benefit, doesn't matter, they can opt out of this tax as long as you have the policy on or before November 1st of this year. And that's something we'll talk about in just a minute, but that date was hotly contested between labor and employer groups. And I think you'll see why it was contested so much in just a minute when we talk about it. So once approved for once approved for the exemption by the Employment Security Department, you are permanently ineligible to participate in the benefits of the program, and you are permanently exempt from the 0.58% payroll tax. So if you're younger or you're a higher earner, or you and your spouse are a higher earning family, that could be a very substantial amount of money, because if you're 19, 20, 25, 30, you might have 35 years of paying for this benefit where you'll have paid in significantly more than you could ever receive from the program. So here are the key dates. So October 31st of this year, that is the date if you want to get an exemption from having to pay the tax. And this is a one-time process to apply for the exemption. After November 1st, you will never again be able to apply for an exemption. Anybody moving in from out of state after November 1 will never be able to get an exemption. Anybody who enters the workforce will never be able to get an exemption. So going after November 1, any new entries into the Washington workforce market will pay this tax. So 10/31/21 is the date that you have to have that policy in force in order to be able to get exempted from the payroll tax. So the Employment Security Department is going to begin issuing exemptions October 1st. So October 1st is the first date you can apply for an exemption from the payroll tax. And you simply have to have an attestation, which is like an affidavit that says, I have long-term care insurance, and I think probably show them your policy title page. They haven't really defined exactly what's going to be required. So January 1st of next year, that's the date that you have to begin collecting quote unquote premiums, which are taxes, out of employees' paychecks, excluding those employees that have submitted their exemption from the ESD to you. So 12/31/22, that's 15 months after they begin accepting applications for exemption, the Employment Security Department is going to stop accepting applications. So there's a 15-month period that people can apply for exemption. But if you notice, you have to have the policy before November 1st of this year. So most people are going to submit it in fourth quarter. So you should be prepared for a significant flood of these coming in the process to get people out of the payroll tax in the fourth quarter if people are actually applying. And then January 1st of 2025, that's the first time that you can apply for benefits. So if you need long-term care services on January 1, 2025, you could apply for benefits if you've been employed the entire 3 years leading up to that. And that's to allow there to be some time to collect funds so they have money to pay for the benefits that could come in. So this is a sample employee communication we've done for a lot of districts. This is one out to, I think, about 2,500 to 3,000 employees, and you guys are free to use this. I'll be sending this over to Julie after this, we're off this. And so there's a few parts of this. The first part is just, here's what it is, and explains what we just talked about, which is what the Long-Term Care Act is. We also give an example to show what the cost would be. It's $24.17 a month if you make $50,000 a year. It's if your household makes $200,000 a year, then it's $96.67 a month is what you end up paying for it. So it also talks about the fact that people can get a one-time exemption if they have another policy. It gives them some drawbacks. And then down here, what it does, what we built into this is a link. So if they would like more information to conduct an anonymous assessment now, they can click on this link. And it will take them to this website. And then they click on the button that says, see how much the tax will cost. And if they enter their age in as 41, their income in is $100,000 a year. They're male, married. They have a spouse that is 42. They also make $100,000 a year. Female, and then they see the analysis. And so this shows them, quite frankly, their long-term care tax is going to be $1,160 per year. The actual long-term care insurance is going to be $1,291. So to be a little bit more, the difference is it's vested on day one. There's significantly more benefits, and the coverage is portable. It moves with them, and there's out-of-state coverage. If they're interested in applying for it, they can simply enter their name, contact information down here, and review options. And there's an agent that we've contracted with out of Yakima. It's an agency called American Independent Marketing, and they will have one of their long-term care agents reach out and try to help the employee. So that process has worked really slick so far. There's one thing that I just found out this morning that has changed. We're using Mutual of Omaha. They're the best, quite frankly, program out there writing individual long-term care policies. Unfortunately, they just changed their program Friday to where they will only work with folks that are 40 years or older. And they were the last carrier from an individual side for just long-term care that we had found that would work with folks that were under 40. So you do have to be 40 or over to apply for a policy. They're also increasing the sizes of their policies. In other words, that $75,000 policy is probably now going to be a $200,000 policy. So it would probably cost, an extra $50 a month for that policy we just looked at. It's just is what we've seen since this law passed. A bunch of carriers just exited the market as quickly as they could. And here's the reason. The reason they don't want to do this, why they're scared of this, is there's no penalty for canceling your policy as soon as you get your exemption. None. You still get your exemption and you don't have to keep the policy. And they're pretty aware that that's going to happen. And so we thought initially there would probably be some type of penalty if you can't, if you got the policy, got the exemption, and then terminated out of it, that the state would have some type of a consequence. And they clarified the definition of the term audit, which they have the right to do in future years, and there's no penalty. So basically what can happen in future years, the state has the right to go back and audit that you have a legitimate exemption. And they define that as being going back in time. If they decided, I don't think the state would, but if they wanted to audit the exemptions, they would go back. All they can do because of the statutory nature of the law, the way that it's written, all they can do is go back and look at your legitimate policy being enforced on the date that you had received the exemption. So let's use me for example. I apply for a policy today. I'm issued one mid-October. I go to the Employment Security Department on October 15. I get my exemption based on having a policy October 15th. I submit that to April, who's my payroll and benefits person. She exempts me from the payroll tax. Life is good. November 1st, I terminate my policy and work the next 10 years. I don't have any long-term care policy and I don't pay the tax. They decide to audit me. They're going to go back and look and say, did you actually have a policy on October 15th, 2021? I can prove that I had a policy on October 15th, 2021. I'm good. So there's no penalty if people want to get the policy just to get out of the tax and terminate it. So
Mark, before we move on, there's a question. Does portable, like with the Mutual of Omaha, does that mean it would cover you in other states?
yes, it does. It means portable means two things. It means it's not tied to a state and it's not tied to an employer. So it would cover you. It'd also cover you for in-home services, which is really important. The era of nursing home coverage is pretty outdated. Most of us want to be taken care of in-home if we can, which means that they would have home aides that would come. You use $100 a day for having somebody come into your home to give you services, or if you needed assistance with the cost of the facility, however that would work. Good question. Okay, so why you should care about this as a district. I just shared this with the superintendents this morning at 7:30, collective bargaining. So I made a phone call that really surprised me while we were still hashing this out, because one of the lobbyists that I work with said that he couldn't figure out why labor was so animate about not giving the extension to go to January 1 to allow the time for these people to get policies. They wanted the cutoff date to be July 24th. So July 24th is just, 7 weeks away. And if that was the date, we wouldn't have had time for anybody to go out and get a policy. Basically, everybody that didn't already have a policy would be in. And so I made a phone call to a lobbyist that I'd become friendly with the last couple of years, who's the head of salary and benefits negotiations for the WA. And I asked her, I said, so you got to tell, what's the deal? I mean, why do you guys? And she goes, Mark, we don't want people opting out because we're not going to pay this. Districts are. And I said, excuse me. And she goes, this is going to be seen as another cost the districts pay, just like the districts paid the carve out for the healthcare authority, or they pay their light bill, they pay whatever. But that's one of our number one bargaining issues. And it made perfect sense, because the labor and employers were on 100%, 180 degrees opposite. Every employer wanted more time to handle this, from Amazon down to school districts, and every labor group wanted this to be to make it as difficult as possible and as short a time as possible to get an exemption. And simply put, the districts wanted, or the labor assumes that they're going to simply have the districts pay for it. So what does that mean to a district as far as an exemption? It means the more you make your people aware that this is a crappy policy and they get an exemption to buy, to get out of paying this payroll tax, you're going to have a smaller target on your back. Because if I have a $10 million payroll at my district, that's $58,000 a year that labor could say, that's what we want to go after. Well, half of the employees opt out of the program. Two things happen. One, it's a $29,000 number. So it's not as attractive a target. But two, it only benefits half my members. And so it's not as, I don't get as much, the unions aren't getting as much credit for going after it. And three, if you do have to cave, because sometimes, you got to pick the least evil in the room. It's half the size. So it definitely is in the district's best interest, in my opinion, to make people well aware of the fact that they can opt out of this, and it's not that great a policy, and give them the means to do it. Like I said, there are some definite limits. I think at this point, unless something changes, your 30-year-olds are going to be stuck. I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot of options for them to find policies. The other thing that makes this difficult is the only thing that we can help you with, for the most part, technically, or that you can help your employees with technically, are traditional long-term care policies. I am having the American Independent Marketing will be showing people who ask for it some blended policies that include life insurance. Those are generally easy to underwrite, and you can get more people approved. You can't promote those as districts simply because SEB doesn't allow you to, because it includes life insurance, and they are the only offer of life insurance. So the other impact, and this is going to be probably more on you guys on this call than it is on the folks that were on the superintendent's call this morning. You're going to have unhappy employees. Like I said, that email and that language has went out to a couple thousand people. There have been quite a few calls to districts going, how do I get out of this? This can't be right. I didn't vote for this tax, whatever you want to say. You're going to hear about it. It might be $25 a month. It might be $48 a month, but people are not going to be happy about having an additional deduction from the payroll.
Mark, can I jump in here? We have some questions in the chat.
Sure.
With what we've been talking about. So we were kind of under the impression that this was something that could not be bargained, that it had to be paid by employees only. Is that just a misunderstanding?
Yes.
Okay. And
the WA and the other one that I've heard from PSE. PSE actually asked me if I could find policies that they could just put in place that would allow the whole district to be exempt, so they could just have the district pay for it. I don't know why there's this assumption that the districts are just going to roll over and pay for this, but that's kind of the assumption with labor right now, that that's going to happen.
Have any of you agreed to this yet? That have you bargained it or agreed to pay for this for your employees yet? You can send me an email if you don't want to admit it in the chat or put it in the chat. Is the tax applied to both spouses individually? So if you both state that your total income or your combined income is 200,000, then you would both pay the higher amount?
It's an individual payroll tax. So I will pay the tax through my employer. My wife works for Fred Hutch Cancer Research. She would have a different deduction based on her income. So it's individual incomes.
Okay.
So how you file taxes are different as far as your federal taxes, but the individual taxes, they're just going to deduct it out of your paycheck.
Okay. And there's another question, and I'm not sure if you answered this. How do our current benefits for long-term disability translate for this exemption?
Okay, so long-term disability benefits are not long-term care benefits. Those are totally different policies. Long-term care is a benefit that basically provides for custodial maintenance. In other words, it's not providing care to get you better. It's when you're just maintaining. And it provides a benefit. Long-term disability replaces your income. Completely different. With long-term disability, all you have to do is not be able to do the duties of your job. Long-term care, you have to need assistance with the activities of daily living. So there is no long-term care benefit in your current program, unless your district had purchased a group long-term care benefit before they stopped being offered years ago.
I have a question. So you say that you have to work at least 5 years in the last 10 years to qualify. So you retire and you don't work for 10 years. If you've already qualified, are you still eligible after you haven't worked for 10 years, or do you lose your benefit once you're retired and you don't work for 10, 15, 20 years?
Depends. There's a temporary vesting, which is 3 of the last 6. because remember, they want to offer benefits on January of 2025. So if it went 5 of 10, they could offer benefits and there'd be nobody eligible. So the first benefit is 3 of the last 6. Then they look at 5 of the last 10. 5 of the last 10 is the permanent vesting. So once you've worked 5 of the last 10, you are permanently vested. So you could file a claim at age 90 after being unemployed for the last 25 years, and you'd still get a benefit. You're permanently eligible once you're vested that way. But if you only work 3 or 4 years, then you can move out past that, and you won't have benefits beyond a few years. In long-term care, most people, retire at 62. You're not going to need long-term care benefit at 66. You're going to need it at 80. So it's really worthless to have a benefit that only goes for a few years. And if you think of the things that get us to long-term care are different than the things that you go to the hospital or have accidents for. Those things that get you to long-term care are Alzheimer's, advanced dementia, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, strokes, those type of things that stop you from being both mobile and from, would cause you to need assistance with just your activities of daily living. The other thing to keep in mind, the reason that it shows when you click married, it shows it together, is because it's way cheaper to issue a combined employee or husband and wife policy as a married couple than it is to do individual policies. So long-term care companies love it when people are married. And unfortunately for the ladies on the call, the reason is because generally speaking, what they found is where there's a man and woman who are married, the man tends to get sick earlier and the woman spends her time taking care of him. And then when he's gone, there's nobody to take care of her, and she needs to use the long-term care coverage. And so that's why the policies are more expensive for women than they are for men. And as such, and the fact that the state requires that group policies issue a unisex rate, no carriers will work with school districts because the female content is usually 60 to 70%. So unless you're a very, very rare district that I've never seen before with a more than 50% male content, you would not be eligible for a group policy.
If a district is bargaining this and the employer will pay, is there a deadline that it must be bargained by to take effect?
No. It's, the cost is, they could bargain this, in next year's contract for the following year. They could and I would really, I think, Cal, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would really look at this like the carve out. And I would avoid this like the plague, the same way the districts that were the first ones to say that they would pay the healthcare authority carve out back when it was single digits, thought it was no big deal. And later they went, oh my gosh, this is, now we're up to, what is it, 60, 70 bucks a month per person. There's nothing to say that this isn't going to go from 0.58 to 0.88 or 1.0. It's not a great benefit, but there's nothing to say that the state's funded it appropriately. So it might increase significantly. So at any point in time, just like the carve out, labor can come and ask you to start paying for it. So think of it in that term. You could have not paid the carve out from, 1980s onward, and 2004, that's the year the union said, no, we want you to start paying it. So just think of it in those type of terms. And you have no control over what the cost is going to be going forward. In other words, we have no idea what they're going to do with this going forward on how they're going to have to change the funding in order to get it to be a good program. They could increase the benefit and the cost. So
Cal,
Julie,
we can't hear you. It looks like you're off mute, but we still can't hear you. So I'll ask your question. Are there any long-term care policies for people under 40?
well, until Friday, there was Mutual of Omaha. And before 2 weeks ago, there was a company called Thrivent, which is actually a fraternal organization of the Lutheran Brotherhood that would go down to age 18. And Thrivent pulled out 2 weeks ago. You know, and even then that was sketchy. In order to get a Thrivent policy, you had to sign an attestation showing that you were a Christian, because they're a Lutheran Brotherhood organization. So we were kind of remiss about using them, just because that's not something a lot of employers want to promote. However, we're looking to try to replace it with an additional one. At this point, no. You know, the Mutual of Omaha was age 30. And I think they're trying to change to discourage people who are just looking to get out of the tax. And I think they're also overwhelmed, like a lot of carriers, with so many people applying for policies. I will send out, in addition to sending the presentation, I'll send, Julie, I'll send you a separate link. So the link to go to that site that will compare policies, that can be sent out just on its own to folks with whatever type of communication you want to include with it. So people can look at some costs and begin to do some planning. I would say that I think the communication piece probably needs to go out soon, because if it goes out in October or September, there's a very good chance people will get a policy that's issued after November 1st and they won't be able to get the exemption.
Thank you so much, Mark. Does anybody have any final questions for Mark?
Well, thanks for having me, guys. And like I said, I'll send copies of this out. Wish I had a more happy topic today, but you know, it is what it is. And feel free to reach out to me. My contact information's in the email. I'm happy to do presentations to employees or be available to help, you know, talk to people about how this might impact them.
Great. Thank you so much.
You bet. Take care.
Have a good day.
You too.
All right. So we are moving right along. Dawn, are you ready to go with updates from CRISC?
Yeah, I sure can.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. Good morning, everybody. Let me go ahead and share my screen. This is going to hopefully be real short, simple, and to the point, and then get us out and on to breaks, which are the important things. Are you guys seeing, let me go ahead and launch this. So PowerPoint for CRISC reminders.
Yep, we see it.
Okay, perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of my video just so that I don't blink out here as we're going along. So first reminder I'll just throw out there is that obviously we're in the throes of budgeting season. We have had our sessions for the training or overview reminders on that. The fiscal was back in February, the HR was in March. All three of those are recorded. They are available on SharePoint, and that's what the screenshot at the bottom is basically just to remind you that you can go into the SharePoint site, and then under fiscal HR, under budget, we have the two folders, and then in there we've got not only the recordings, but also any documentation that goes along with that as well. And get this to want to go. From the update standpoint, talked a little bit back in April about employee gender. And by that, the fact that the state is now looking at accepting a value of X for non-binary. So now basically we've got F for female, M for male, and an X for non-binary. Recipsy's been working with Skyward on getting the programming updated for that. That was made available in SMS. So you now have the ability in SMS to go in and select blank as a gender, and then that blank will be translated to an X when that information is passed along to the state for reporting. It is pending in cumulative for districts that are in cumulative. The expectation is that it'll be out here within the next month or so as far as that, and so I can definitely update when it's available in cumulative as well. As I said just a second ago, basically the blank is going to translate to gender X. both with your retirement reporting, also with OSPI as far as state reporting, as far as S275 and those sort of things. And this has been something that's been available on the student side for a while, and they're now just finally kind of transitioning this to being available over on the employee side as well. I'm going to go through these real quick. Obviously, we just had Mark's presentation and covered a whole lot more on this. Obviously, the big thing on this one is that WSIPSI is aware of it. They're following along with the Employment Security Department as far as the rulemaking that they're going through as far as exemptions. Also, when they get into phase 2 and they start talking on premium collection, those sort of things. So just know that WSIPSI, their state reporting team, is monitoring kind of what's coming up, determining if there's any software updates that need to be made as far as that, and then obviously would work with Skyward on getting those made. If you want to follow the process, there's some links in here as far as that. As we said, the first contribution started 2022, the 58 cents. Again, that it's every employee contributes unless you've been exempt. Obviously, employers don't, but then we also know that that's obviously sounds like it's going to be a hot topic for CBAs and those sort of things. So just moving through those real quickly. This is a new one here, and this is a recommendation that we're making, and that is that if you have, and I'm going to say admin just because that's typically what it is, but basically for your admin or for any contracts that start pays before September. So typically we talk about admins being our July through June pays. We do have some districts that have August through July pays. Those pay schedules, that are outside the typical September through August ones. What WSIPSI is recommending, and so therefore we in turn are recommending, is that you look at switching to a unique pay frequency for that. And if you can make that transition this year, as we're coming up on the end of June payroll, and then we would be starting our new contracts with July, it's going to allow us to set the foundation for things better to come in the future. And basically the big key here is the little bullet at the bottom, which is it's going to allow for the DMT, which is basically our migration tool, to work better and allow in less reconfiguration and cumulative. So don't take that as a panic of, oh my gosh, Don's talking cumulative. Just realize this is us saying, hey, can we lay a foundation of something that's going to make it work a little bit better? And so the idea is that you're going to create a separate pay frequency code. And the example here is it's called admin. A lot of times we talk about calling it MA for monthly admin or AM for admin monthly. It's still a 12 months per pay. So it's very almost identical to your typical monthly or M that you have, that's the 12 pays. And then it's something that's then attached to those folks that have that July through June, or you could create another one that would be your folks. There are a couple districts we know that do have August through July people as well. For our accrual districts, this is something that's going to come in and really help you when we talk about encumbrance. It allows us, and I'm going to go ahead and click through this real quick to get to the picture, where when you're running that encumbrance process, you can very clearly define the time remaining pays for those two groups. So in this example here, we're talking about an April encumbrance. I only have one pay left for my administrators because those people are a July through June, where I have 3 pays left for my normal monthly. So it's going to allow for the encumbrance process to work a little cleaner and a little easier for our accrual districts. For our cash districts, it's not going to impact you there, but it will be something that's going to impact us down the road as we do get to the point of start talking about migration into cumulative and those sort of things. And so we just decided that this would be something we'd bring up this year, particularly as we're getting ready to start our July pays, and just say, hey, if you don't have this created yet, we highly recommend it. It's going to make your life a whole lot easier as we go down the road. It's not necessarily a huge change other than just simply creating a new pay frequency code and then attaching that to the correct pays. And I know Darlene just did her July payroll training. She mentioned it there. We've also talked about creating kind of a cheat sheet or something like that that's going to basically allow to kind of give some more information to this as we go along as well. So just know that it is something that we're making aware of, and just simply to allow you to do that piece. And I see Tanya's got a question. Okay, Darlene answered it already. That makes it great. Thanks for being in my corner, Darlene, from that piece. Let me go ahead and get rid of this. And
Yeah, so if everybody didn't see the question, Tanya asked if the admin staff changed their pay during the course of the year, do we need to change the pay frequency for remaining pays? And yes, we would recommend setting up instead of an AM, being A11, A12, something along those lines that would show that your pay frequencies are being reduced, like you do with your other September to August payroll people.
thanks, Darlene. And then the last thing that I have is just talking about upcoming. We had talked in April about the fact that there's going to be the transition of to budgetary data mining, that the PAC interface for reporting is going to go away. Initially, that was supposed to be in May. Then Skyward went ahead and put it on hold to make sure that they were making the revamps to budgetary data mining and get that thing all done in time frame. So they have now defined that they are going to go ahead and make that transition with the release on August 7th. So as of August 7th, where the screenshot here shows reporting in the PAC environment, if you were to click on one of those links, it's going to take you to budgetary data mining in the web. I did do 2 sessions, about 90 minutes long each. One was a general overview of budgetary data mining, and the second one that specifically kind of talked about sequences and breaks, which is kind of the sorting and the formatting aspect of budgetary data mining. And both of those were recorded, and they are available on SharePoint. So you can go back and revisit those. And as we get closer to that August timeframe, we'll kind of look at it and say, okay, do we need to have another quick reminder of that piece, just to kind of let people see where they're at. The piece that we are uncertain on still is that there may be some security changes that need to go along with that. And so as we learn more, we'll obviously again share that with you guys, but just know that they have put a date to this. This is going to happen as of August 7th. The nice thing is the fact that any of your reports that you have in the PAC environment, those reports are available in budgetary data mining. So you're able to run those reports in the budgetary data mining environment, function very similar and those sort of things. And so that actually takes me to this last slide, which was just simply the fact of, I know one of the areas of concern that people had was when I'm working in my PAC environment, I have this ability to be able to adjust the parameters or the breaks or the filters. So I have one report that I'm able to use multiple times because I'm adjusting the filter of what I'm filtering for, maybe by different locations or by different programs or those sort of things. How do I do that in budgetary data mining? And you do have that same functionality. And where it comes into play is when you go to say that you want to print or you want to export your report into Excel, this is the window that typically pops up. And most of the time, we've always left this bottom radio button where it's at use current setup, no change. But if you do move it to the middle radio button, change setup for this run only, do not save, it then makes these parameters, breaks, account ranges, those buttons available. And so it gives you that ability to go in and adjust the parameter or go in and adjust the account range that you want to do. And again, you can do it. If I use the middle radio button, it's not saving it. It's literally just, I'm using it for this run of my report and that's it. If I choose the bottom radio button, then obviously it's making the change and it's going to save that. So then it would be set for that program or that location the next time I came back in to run the report. So that was kind of the concern of one of the major functionality was, hey, this is something I use a lot in PAC. How can I do that in the web? And that's where that is at. So again, that's kind of what I got for today. So not a whole lot, but always open to questions and that sort of thing. If anybody has any questions on Skyward or functionalities or any of those pieces. Nothing at all. All right.
Nope, not seeing anything. Thanks so much, Don.
Nope.
We appreciate you joining the forums every month and keeping us up to date.
No problem. And I'll send this over to you in a PDF so you can send it out to everybody here later in the day.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and take a break now until 10:15, and then we'll come back with updates and reminders and celebrations at the end. So we'll see you in 15.
Hey, Julie, do you want to pause the recording so I don't lose it, half
Yep.
of it? Okay.
Hope you guys had a nice little break, and we're just going to go ahead and get back on track here. Can you see my PowerPoint slideshow, April?
Yep.
Thank you. Alrighty, so now we're just going to kind of talk about some budget reminders, things that have been going on in the last month or so, and just kind of try to clear up any questions that you have. Feel free to put anything in the chat or just unmute and jump in with any questions on budget or anything coming up. So for transportation, the transportation stabilization money is for the current year only. So most of you probably saw that on your May apportionment dollars. The rest of the money will be coming through in July. So just a clarification there, you want to make sure, if at all possible, to spend all of your transportation stabilization money this year. OSPI really went to bat for us with LEDGE to get this additional money because most districts still had the same transportation expenditures and did not have the revenue coming in. And so we just want to make sure to be spending all of that transportation stabilization money. There's no hold harmless or carryover of those funds. So if you don't spend them in the current year, they will not be available for you for next year. For budgeting purposes, you can go ahead and budget your 1920 transportation allocation for next year. It would be the higher of your 1920 allocation or a calculation based on what's in stars now for the 21-22. I think for most districts, the 1920 will be higher, and so you can go ahead and budget that for your allocation. For food service, I'm sure you all saw the communication coming out from OSPI. Food service revenue and expenditures for this year should be coded to program 98. So through your apportionment report, that revenue has been coming in program 89, community services, and they want you to do the journal entry to move all of that program revenue into program 98, where your expenditures are. So kind of opposite of what we did last year at year end. I personally would wait until you got your June apportionment to see if they're going to do some sort of an adjustment on the apportionment report. That's kind of what I'm thinking that they're going to do, but that's just my thought. So it's up to you. That's what I would do, is wait for June apportionment, see if that's on there, and if not, then just do the journal entries to move the revenues to program 98, and then if you have already coded expenditures to 89, same thing. All food service program revenues expenditures will be in program 98. Same with budgeting for next year. You'll want to make sure to budget your food service revenue in program 98. I would do all of my budgeting in 61 in federal food service revenue because they have extended the federal program to offer free meals to students through next school year. So we'll talk about that a little bit more when we're talking about the F203, but just be keeping that in mind. The WASBO presentation from the Child Nutrition recommends using the Seamless Summer option for food service program for next year. That will be reimbursed at the highest rate. So that is what they are encouraging you to use for 21-22. Unless unless you are a CEP district, and then you may need to contact OSPI to see what's the best option for you. Judy, do you have anything to add on that?
No, that's exactly what they said for the CEP. You can pause your CEP, but you want to make sure it's your best option for this year because of the higher reimbursement rate.
Great, thank you. For ESSER money in capital projects, if you're planning to use ESSER funds for capital projects expenditures, make sure that you're really analyzing what that's going to look like at your district. You may need to do a budget extension in the current year for capital projects and general fund. Just because of the timing of things, you want to make sure that you have budget capacity in both of those funds for those expenditures. OSPI is preparing guidance, but I have not seen that yet as to what that process will be to transfer the revenues from your ESSER money to capital projects fund, and then you can code expenditures there. But just because we're coming down to the end of the year, if you think you are going to need to do a budget extension to use your ESSER funds for capital related expenditures, just think about that. You may want to do extensions in both funds. Also, if that's what you're planning to do, you have to get approval from OSPI to spend that federal money on capital assets. So that approval is in the form package in iGrants. You need to make sure that you go in there and have that approval on file from OSPI to spend federal money on capital expenditures. Also with the ESSER grants, the additional or the remaining 10% of your allocation was released. So you'll need to go in and do a budget revision for your ESSER 2 grant to increase your allocation for that additional 10%. The communication from OSPI that we'll talk about in noteworthy items gives you the different scenarios based on where your ESSER 2 budget is in the review process, or if you've been approved or whatnot. But it's pretty standard, just go in just like we do with carryover when you have those additional funds, just to do the budget revision to get that money in your allocation. Here's a reminder for the ESSER codes. We get these questions every day on which account code to use for the different funds. So we just wanted you to have this. The gear funds, if it's coming through your apportionment, then you're using revenue 6111. The program code for expenditures is 1100 for gear funds. And I know a lot of you got money directly from the county. Then you would use revenue 6311 for those gear funds. Still, it's program 11, but I would create a separate expenditure code to distinguish between if the money's coming directly on your apportionment or if you received it from the county for those expenditures. ESSER 2 is program 12 and revenues coming into 6112, and ESSER 3 is program 13. ESSER 1 is not on here. Hopefully you all have spent and claimed your ESSER 1 money, but they did not have separate program codes for that, as you remember. And so we just had that unique identifier with your account code so that you could show that it was COVID-19 related expenditures, and claimed that mostly hopefully within programs 97 and 01. For levy and LEA, we recommend using OSPI's worksheet for estimating your 2022 through 25 levy authority and LEA for your general fund budget. This will show you the caps that you have, the per pupil caps or the rate caps based on what your actual revenue for your levy and LEA will be. And as you remember, that's on the budget preparation page on OSPI's site. And the yellow cells you can update with your enrollment and assessed valuation information. So this tool is great, not only for your F195, but your F195F as well. And you'll want to make sure that you're using your 2022 voter approved levy amounts in your certification page for your budget. And then you'll use this spreadsheet if you have any rollback amounts that you need to enter as well, so that you're budgeting your revenue correctly in the F195. When you're putting those inputs in for your enrollment in that spreadsheet, you can use the higher of your 1920 actual average enrollment or your 2021 actual average enrollment. So whichever one is higher. Typically, probably for most districts, it will be the 1920, and they'll allow you to use that for the levy and LEA calculations for this year. And then you can reference the tax pages on our website for the other funds, levy collection amounts, debt payments, any of your bond information, but just make sure that that information is accurate and complete. If you had any updated debt schedules or anything that we didn't receive, then that wouldn't be included on those tax pages. So if you notice that, if you just want to send us the updated debt schedules, and we can get that updated for you. So just let us know. The carryover and recovery tool is out now for 2020 and 21. Please go in and look at that. We want to try to minimize the state recovery as much as possible for this year. So it shows what your allocation is for all the state programs for the current year. And you just put in what your actual expenditures to date are, and then do a calculation to project out what you expect your total expenditures for the year to be in those state programs, just so that you, if you need to make any changes, now's a good time to be able to make those changes. And also you can use that tool to update your transportation allocation with these stabilization dollars, so that you can really compare what you think your actual expenditures in program 99 will be for the year compared to your allocation plus stabilization dollars, because it's just really important. OSPI is really emphasizing to spend that money this year. So how you can do that is go into the allocation tab on the recovery tool and just update in your program 99 allocation to include your stabilization money. The K-3 class size calculator for the current year is out there as well. So that's good information for you to have. If you are projecting the same enrollment for next year and no staffing changes, then you can just go ahead and use current year K-3 class size as your input into the F203. If you are making changes, there are yellow cells within that spreadsheet where you can update your expected enrollment for next year in those grades and your expected FTE for budgeting purposes. So the F203 is out. Hopefully you all know that. Several of you have already completed it, so that's great. We do have that manual entries document for all of the input items that really just walks you through the F203 document, gives you information on where you can receive the items that you need to enter in there. So I'll send that out after the meeting today. Just a couple reminders, and these are included in the input items, but when you're entering your special ed percentage in the F203, you want to enter it as a decimal. So if your special ed percentage is 16.5%, then you would enter 0.1650. It really messes up your whole calculation if you enter it in as the 16.5. If you have a highly capable program, then you need to make sure to mark yes in the F203. It defaults to no, so you need to go in and mark yes for that so that you can receive that funding September through December for the highly capable program. There is no hold harmless for next year, so that amount should be 0. And in the meals served section, if you want to add anything in there, because we really just aren't really sure what's going on, you would only want to enter that into the free meals, down at the bottom where we estimate your meals served for the year to help determine what your state revenue for food service would be. You would only enter anything in free meals, but really we're recommending just leaving that blank because, like I said, they have extended the federal program. And so the expectation is that your revenue really will be coming in from federal sources, not state. And that's all that this does when you're putting in your meal served, is generate that 4198 revenue, which we don't expect to have. Once your F203 is complete, let us know that it's ready for review, because that's something that we can look at ahead of time while we're waiting for the F195 to become available. The last date that I have heard is the week of June 15th. So next week, hopefully the F195 will be out. But if your F203 is done and you're entering those revenues back into Skyward, and you've updated ready for ESD review, then let us know. If you could send an email to all three of us, and we can go ahead and do that portion of the review while we're waiting. It's going to be a big flood of budgets when the F195 is open. So anything that we can do ahead of time to prepare would be great. And then please just be patient with us on the review process and getting back to you, where we will review those as quickly as possible as they come in. Just reminders for the F195 and the F195F for your projection. They're due to the ESD by July 10th. Also, that's the due date to have them available to your public if they want to come in and look at that information. So that's the deadline, is July 10th. Once it is ready for us to review, again, we don't get a notification. So you'll need to send us an email to April, Jody, and I saying that your F195 is ready for review. And then if you could send these additional documents, that just makes that review process a lot easier, and we don't have to ask as many questions. So if you have explanations of your budget edits and your revenue edits, as well as your September budget status report, so we can ensure that everything came over from the system into the F195 accurately. Your multi-year levy and LEA tool that we were just talking about. If you didn't make any changes and you just used exactly what OSPI had, then that's fine, but most people make changes on that. So if you could send that, as well as your draft resolution, which should have your board meeting date as well. Next, we're going to move on to noteworthy items. Is there any questions before we do that on anything we've gone over so far?
Kim just had one question. She said she's interested in hearing if any districts have addressed June 19th as a holiday beginning in 2022.
Does anybody have anything to share on that? Okay, well, if anybody does, then you can send that to me and I can send it out to the group, or to Kim. That would be great. Are we seeing stuff in the chat here?
Yeah, a couple we have not addressed it, and one person said they put it on their admin calendar for 2021-22 as a paid holiday.
Great, thank you. Alrighty. So for the June noteworthy items, again, this is my spiel. I think I say every month. This is just information that we have seen emailed to us. Trying to put it in a summarized format where you can click on the links and have the resources. So we'll go ahead and go through this. I think that we learned a lot today, or I did for sure, about the long-term care plan. Here's some helpful resources where you can look at some information, get additional information on that, as well as a flyer. And like Mark said, I'll send out his presentation with the resources that he has as well. There was a OSPI bulletin about the LAP program, that it's effective, changes effective immediately. So for the current year, and really it's just kind of expanding the use of LAP funds, not making it as directly related to K4 and how you can use it in high school. So you want to make sure to look at that because it is for this current school year and moving forward. Bulletin 2721 has the grade entry guidance. So basically it's talking about the ages for each of the grade levels, and that basically when students are 8 years old, it's required in law from 8 to 17 that they attend school. So that just gives you guidelines there for reference. There is also eligibility requirements for, oh, excuse me, ouch, for the early childhood and ECAP program. So there's waivers in here that you want to make sure to look at that bulletin there. The next one has the attachments in the bulletin about the instructional funding models for next year. I know that you've all heard that we really need to try to be in person next year. We need to have the option for all students to be able to attend school full time. And these attachments and bulletin talk about what that looks like. And then if you're planning to have a hybrid model or ALE program for next year. There is some updated guidance for the summer food school reimbursement. This is what we were just talking about, how all of the revenue needs to be in program 98, not program 89. And they're going to have updated guidance in the accounting manual, I believe, but really it's just, it was different for the revenue to be in program 89 anyways this year. So we're going back to everything in program 98. The Cedars rollover to the new year will be available for 21-22 submissions by Friday, August 13th. So just a heads up if you have anything to do with that. There is a bulletin out for informed consent for healthcare and vaccinations for homeless students within your district. I was not aware that the school could give consent. So if you should take a look at that. Valuable information there. OSPI has posted on their website the use of ESSER funds that Department of Ed has put out. Is a huge document. It's kind of funny. We hear a lot that the ESSER funds are so flexible and that, you know, you can use it for a lot of things, which is true. But then they have this 80-page document to talk about what are allowable uses of the funds. So I think it's just because there's so many questions that have been coming out about this. So it's a good reference, and you can search for keywords within that so that you can look up any questions that you have on the use of ESSER funds. We talked about this in the slides about the ESSER 2 additional allocation that you need to go in and do a budget revision to get that additional funding in your allocation. WASA has their end of session report. You can click on the link here and just gives the wrap up and summary of everything that happened in the budget for this year. So that's really important information so that things don't get lost on any of the new items that passed in the budget. OSPI is asking for any of the districts that have to change their school mascot based on the new legislation for offensive type mascots. If that applies to you, they're asking that you fill out this survey to let them know how much that will cost you. It's not required, you don't have to do it, but it's just good information for them to have. So here's the link to that. The Child Nutrition Emergency Operations Reimbursement Program has been updated, and additional money is out there. So you can click on this bulletin. It takes you through the calculation of an additional funds that you would be receiving. If your district qualifies for the pandemic EBT program, I guess, they have extended it through the summer months. And so the upload that you need to send in needs to be completed by June 14th, so by next week, so that your students that qualify can get that additional pandemic EBT for the summer months. The National School Lunch Breakfast Program for next year for child care institutions is out there, and so there's the bulletin. If you're working with childcare institutions on that, you can get the information there. And the LAP end of year report is now open, and it's due by September 30th. So make sure that your program director or whoever's in charge of that gets that completed by September 30th. Here's the link to the PD enroller to sign up for the upcoming CRSC training classes, and Dawn already talked about that. And then we just have the link to WAS's podcast. So everything, Dan had those updated podcasts each week, everything that was going on, which I don't know if you want to look at that anymore or just look at the wrap up. Any questions on that? Or any questions on anything? No? Does anybody have any information sharing type things? So anything that they want to address with everybody? No, okay. Then I'll go ahead and get back to the presentation here. And now it's time to celebrate. So we have had a lot going on in the last year and even more going on for next year. And since we have last met in person for forum, we have all of these new business managers in our region. So that's a lot of change. And this is quite a bit of our 44 districts. We have these new business managers. And so I just wanted to, it's up to you guys. I didn't tell you ahead of time if you want to turn your camera on so they can see your face. But you don't have to, because I would not want to if I didn't know ahead of time. So I completely understand that. But Centralia School District has hired Joseph Vetter, so he will start in July. Chehalis School District has hired Teresa Madrid. She has been there, oops, I lost my notes, for a couple of months. I think she started in April. Keith Onstead is at Hoquiam School District, and he has been on since March. Here we go. Now I found him. Dee Dee Owens is at Mossy Rock School District, and she has been here since last summer, but she has never been in person at a forum. Oakville School District has hired Melody Bedford. She has been on since March of this year. Satsep has hired Dawn Seamiller. She's been here actually since last March, but again, never in person with all of us. Jackie McDonald is now at Toledo School District and started there in April. And Tumwater has hired Jennifer Carrower, and she'll start July 1st. So I just want to welcome you all to this group. My hope is that starting in September that we can be in person and people can see your face. But welcome. I hope that you get to know these people, and I know we have a cohort in Academy where we're kind of a tight little group, and so hopefully you can expand that out to everybody, because really, if you're not a business manager at a school district, you have no idea what we do. So we are a unique group. So welcome all of you. Next, I want to recognize our retirees. So we have a few people that have been in school districts for many years and have done a great job of leading their districts to great things. So I want to start with Rick Bonner. Rick has been in schools for many years. He started at ESD 171, then went to La Center School District for 6 months. He was at Tumwater School District for 3 years, and then now is ending his career at Centralia School District, where he's been for 2.5 years. I asked Rick what was the best part of the job, being the business manager, and he said knowing that he's been part of a worthy endeavor and that amazing period, time period between year end and budget season. Things that Rick will not miss is board meetings and meetings in general, getting up at 5 a.m., the daily commute, and waiting for the legislature to get done. I can agree with that. Plans and retirement. So Rick plans to spend time with his family, especially his grandchildren, gardening, camping, travel, and several overdue backyard projects. Kurt Venegat once said, "I tell you, we are here on earth to fart around, and don't let anyone tell you different." And Rick aspires to do that and embrace that philosophy. So thank you so much, Rick, for all of your service in the school district. I know that I have really enjoyed working with you, and you've done a great job, and happy retirement to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Next, I want to talk about Jim Britton. Jim also has worked in school districts for many years. He started off at Stillicum School District for 5 years and is ending his career in school districts at Tumwater, where he's been for 3 years. The best part of the job for Jim was managing the district finances and problem solving with departments, buildings, and staff. Things he will not miss is unions and legislation that financially impacts school districts. In retirement, Jim plans to finish building their house on the Columbia River in Washougal, enjoying time with family, a little fishing, traveling, and sitting on the back patio watching the river flow, which sounds amazing. So thank you so much, Jim. You really have contributed to this group, and I really enjoyed working with you. Congratulations and enjoy your retirement.
Thank you. You'll all be missed.
And next, I want to talk about Shannon Rothland. Shannon has been at Toledo School District for 7 years. The best part of the job for Shannon is all the wonderful people that she's had the chance to work with and get to know. Things that she will not miss about the job is food services. And in retirement, Shannon plans on traveling and spending time with her grandchildren. Shannon, it has been super great working with you. I hope that you really enjoy your time, and congratulations on retirement. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say? We've got a lot going on in the chat here if you guys can't see it. Lots of congratulations and thank yous. And I'm gonna miss you guys, but I'm really happy for you. You put in your time, and I can't wait till I can retire, so. Alrighty, and April, are you ready?
For those of you who have not heard, it is with a saddened heart that we announce the passing of Erica Bari. Erica was diagnosed with cancer in January of this year and passed away peacefully at her home with her family and loved ones by her side on May 27th. Erica has worked in the Hoquiam School District since 2012 when she started in the food service department. She then became the payroll officer and then moved up to the fiscal officer position and ended her time as the business manager, a role that she took on in 2018. She was a student in our Business Manager Academy, and she brought so much charisma to our group. Erica always went above and beyond to make sure that she was doing everything correctly and that she understood the reason why she was doing what was asked of her. In her 3rd year of Academy, she provided a wealth of information to the Academy by talking about the experiences she had within her district. Even up to her very last days, Erica was worried about sharing any and all information that she could think of with us and the new business manager to help with the transition. She gave everything to Hoquiam and loved the district with all her heart. All of you are like family to us, and we worry about your health and your mental stability, and we are here for you. Erica will always hold a special place in our hearts, and we will always cherish the memories we have of her. If you would like to attend her memorial service, please reach out to us and we will get you that information. We hope you all have a great summer and get some much needed time in with your families. Remember, we are here for you when you need assistance. Please email all 3 of us so you can receive the fastest response. We hope to see you all in September. Have a great summer. Academy students, we will take an hour for lunch, so please come back at 11:45